do Falcons do? Rise up. Welcome to Rise Up Reactions, the show where we talk all things Falcons, NFL, Georgia sports, and in general the sports news of the day. I'm your host, Dr. Lee Denning, lifelong sports fan. Today I just wanted to take a couple of minutes to talk about the Falcons' 2023 cap situation. Now, we don't know what the actual cap is going to be for next year. We do project that the NFL salary cap, which has gone up every year except for the year of the pandemic, where it went down by, I think, about $25 million from where it was the year prior, and really screwed up a lot of the Falcons' contracts and the plans for the future, because that has put us in a dead cap or a bad cap situation for years. We're instead going to be looking at about a $225 million cap. It was $208 million this year. And as far as teams that are going to have the most money, the Chicago Bears have it by a landslide with $119 million. Now, they are not free and clear on that entire $119 million. It is estimated that they're going to have about 102 because of active spending and because of dead cap issues. Falcons are number 2, though, in all categories. We are projected to have $74.7 million in cap space, which, again, solidly number 2. If you include our dead cap, which next year we're hit for $13 million, as well as our active spending, we are going to be looking at about $57 to $58 million altogether that we would have to spend on players, which is quite a lot. So particularly in order to buy some good talent or to re-sign some of the guys that have done really well for the team so far. So in terms of who we're going to be looking at, we need to re-sign A.J. Terrell at some point. He's still on his rookie deal, and I anticipate that we're probably going to exercise the 5th-year option on him after this season. We have said we're not going to exercise Caleb McGarry's 5th-year option, so he is probably gone, but I'm going to talk about him in a minute. And then we will need to find money to pay Chris Lindstrom after this coming year. We've already exercised his 5th-year option. He's going to be, I think it's $13 or $14 million of our cap next year, but that's already accounted for in these figures. But he's going to be a guy that we have to re-sign. So we do have to think about the future as well for a lot of these players. But there's going to be some notable free agents on the market that we will certainly be in contention for. And as far as some of those guys go, I did want to talk about, what we need the most, more than anything, is going to be defense. It's very clear that we still don't have an effective pass rush. It's okay. It's better than what it was. But we're still close to the bottom on pass rush, sacking the quarterbacks, getting after the quarterback and putting pressure, which, again, in turn makes our secondary look terrible. They're not great anyway because right now they're incredibly thin with our 2 starting corners out, as well as losing Dean Marlowe to the trade deadline, going to the Buffalo Bills. So we're going to need to build that particular area up tremendously in order to be competitive. The good news, 2 teams in our division, actually 3 teams in our division, are in god-awful cap situations for at least the next year. And that would be the worst of it. The worst 2 teams are the Saints and the Bucks. Saints are projected to be $67 million over the cap with current contracts, including players that they're losing. And for the Bucks, same thing, $57 million. So they're in bad situations. The Panthers are estimated to be $17 million over the cap. So we are going to have the most money in the division by a landslide to make moves. Speaking of, there's actually the first 2 players I wanted to talk about are both in the division, and I think would be excellent additions to us if they were willing to come and play. So, the first would be Marcus Davenport. He is the number 1 guy that I think we should be targeting in the offseason this year. We need a solid edge rush. He has not had a PFF grade less than 75 in the last few years since he's been in the league. The Saints do not have money to either extend him for a 5th-year option or to pay him, or actually I guess he's on his 5th-year option. They don't have the money to pay him a contract that he deserves. It would be genuinely shocking to me if they managed to re-sign him somehow. But we are a team that should be on his radar. He can stay in the South. He can stay in a division that he knows. And again, he's somebody that I think would be an excellent addition to our team, particularly in order to build up our pass rush. He has been a dynamic threat for the New Orleans Saints for the last few years, and he's somebody that I would welcome to the team if we manage to get him. And again, we will certainly have the money to pay him. But in 4 years, he's had 21.5 sacks. He's going to be 27 at the start of the 2023 season. I think a 3 to 4 year contract for him would be very reasonable. Probably going to cost us an arm and a leg. You're looking at least probably $15 to $18 million per year for someone of his caliber. But we'll just kind of see how that plays out. But I think that's what we're going to end up looking at for probably one of the main contracts. The next guy that I think, again, we're having trouble in the secondary. Casey Hayward is old. We do have him, I think we have him for a 2-year deal, but still, he's injury prone, obviously, and he's not going to get any younger. So we are going to need to be looking at that corner position, and I think we need to look no further than Jamel Dean. Jamel Dean, Tampa Bay corner, he's going to be 26 in 2023. We could easily sign him to a 3 or 4 year deal. Again, the Tampa Bay Bucks are in the second worst cap situation. They're not going to be able to pay him. He is only allowing 2.5 receptions per game. He has a PFF grade of greater than 76 every year he's been in the league. Definitely somebody that I think would be beneficial, having seen him play and realize what a terror he is to our receivers in the past. I would love to see him in the red and black for the Falcons here and see how he does for us. But I think if we could get both of them, and it's not unreasonable to think we wouldn't get both of them in a free agent situation, though we're going to have to be competing with the Bears here pretty heavily. Other teams that are notable, the Giants have $62 million, the Patriots have $62 million, Seahawks have $52 million, the Bengals have $52 million, and the Texans have $48 million. So there are a lot of teams that you would look at and say they're in rebuilding mode who finally are out of all of their bad contracts. But again, the Falcons make the most sense for a lot of these teams, especially after showing that we are starting to build a winning culture. Seahawks, I think, is going to be a tough team to compete with for some of this talent as well. Bears, I'm still not convinced that they're solid here. As far as defense, I think those are probably our clear-cut defensive guys that we're looking at. There's one more I'm going to talk about in a second, but I want to move to the offense real quick. As far as players that are going to be available from the wide receiver standpoint, you're looking at Jacoby Myers, who I do think will get re-signed by the Patriots. You are looking at a few other guys here. Let's see here. Mecole Hardman, Allen Lazard, Juju Smith-Schuster. These are all guys that could find their way onto other teams at the end of this year. They're all guys that would make us a little bit better. I don't think any of them are necessarily wide receiver ones, except for maybe Juju. I don't know if he still has the juice left in him, but we'll see. But those are all guys that we probably need to be looking at because we do need to build up that wide receiver core. Even with Drake London, he will probably be our anchor because he's very clearly the best wide receiver we have next to Kyle Pitts, who's a wide receiver in a tight end's body. But we only need about one more wide receiving piece to go along with a quarterback who can actually throw the ball. Lamar Jackson is going to re-sign with Baltimore. I don't think anybody thinks different than that. Tom Brady should retire after this year. He's the second quarterback that could come off the board. Daniel Jones, I do not want to see him for the Falcons. I think that he will probably get an extension after playing this well for the New York Giants. They'll probably give him at least 1 or 2 more years. Jimmy Garoppolo, he's a little bit older, but he's not a guy that I would hate to see in the Falcons. I've already talked about him as somebody that I wouldn't mind as a game manager and somebody who can make the big plays when needed, especially if we turn into a run game team here. Geno Smith, as well as he's playing in Seattle, I look for them to possibly extend him. And beyond that, that's really all I would say is worthwhile from the quarterback position. But none of these are guys that I think are going to make or break our team. We need to start thinking about our offensive line a little bit more because we still have some holes and we still have some issues. So the guy that I think makes the most sense to us, Jake Matthews is not a true left tackle. He is much better at right tackle. He was in right tackle for the bulk of his career. He has struggled since we moved him at left tackle, though he has played relatively well there. I think we need to go for a true left tackle that we can build on for the next 3 to 4 years in Elton Jenkins from Green Bay. The Green Bay Packers do not have the money to re-sign this man. They are about to be in cap hell. He's a Pro Bowler. If you combine him with the likes of Jake Matthews, if you combine him with Elijah Wilkinson, Chris Lindstrom, and Drew Dahlman, we would have one of the most potent offensive lines in the league, both for the pass defense and the rushing game. I think he would be an excellent addition. He does have some injury concerns. Tom Grossi is going to hate that I'm talking about him because I know he loves Elton Jenkins and wants to keep him in Green Bay. But I hate to tell you, Tom, y'all don't have the money. I don't know how you're going to make it, but Aaron Rodgers has screwed you over in terms of contracts for the next 3 years, and it's very clear that you guys are on the back end of your Super Bowl run. you're just not going to make it anymore. You're going to have to start leaning on Jordan Love at some point. But Elgton Jenkins, I think, makes the absolute most sense for us to go for. The next guy is another defensive guy, Jadeveon Clowney, Cleveland Browns. They probably can make a deal to keep him next year, though they are going to be one of the teams with next to no money. They are in a slightly better position than about the next 10 teams below them, so they could finagle some money around and make a deal for him. I don't think they end up doing it, though, because I think he's going to demand a little bit more money than they're going to end up having. He's probably a guy that even in the twilight of his career, and I say that he's only 30 years old. I'm 34. He's 30 years old, but for the NFL as an edge rusher, that's starting to get up there in years. I would not sign him to more than a 1 or 2 year deal, but he probably is going to command $8 to $10 million per year just because of that veteran presence and because of what he potentially brings to the field. He's not a piece that we would long-term build around, but again, we need something to bolster us at the edge. Somebody that I definitely think can do that, especially if Arnold Ebiketie takes a step forward in the next 2 years. Somebody that he can learn from, could mentor, and again, I think that he would be a decent piece for a few years. He'll be 30 starting 2023, but not a guy that I think would be excellent for us in the long run. Just definitely at this point in his career, he's a filler piece. He may not want to sign with us because he may be looking for a Super Bowl ring, and I don't know that even with all this money that we're going to be a Super Bowl contending team next year. I don't know that there's a good enough quarterback out there if Ridder is not the guy for the future. I don't know that we're going to be able to put it all together in the next year or two to make a Super Bowl run, but we are certainly going to be able to build the trenches, build the pieces for that run. And the last guy I wanted to talk about is actually a guy that I've spoken incredibly negatively on because he's had a just absolute shit show of a career for his first 3 years with the Falcons, and that would be Kaleb McGary. He has found a way to turn it around this year so far. He is playing at a fairly high level. He only has a few penalties on the year so far, whereas he was leading the league at his position last year. He's only allowed a couple of sacks this year through the first 8 games, which is not all that terrible. Would love to see it be 0, but compared to him allowing greater than 10 for a couple of years in a row, it's a nice change. And again, I think some of that may be a little bit more Marcus Mariota making him look good because now we have a mobile quarterback back there and we have somebody that's going to escape the pressure that gets through him. But he's somebody that I don't think we would probably sign. He's a guy that is on the radar, I think, at this point to get a restructured deal for a 2 or 3 year contract. He's not somebody that I would pay anywhere near Jake Matthews money. He's not even somebody I would pay anywhere near the Chris Lindstrom money that we're going to have to pay him. But he's a guy that has shown this year that he can bounce back, he can grow. He's about to be hitting the peak of his career. He's going to be 26 years old going into the 2023 season, and he would have a few solid years in the peak of his career that could be with the Falcons, especially with us drafting him. I just think the whole idea of us not extending him for that 5th year option tells us a lot about what the Falcons are planning on doing. But look, these are only 5 guys that I've really gone in depth on. If we got all of them for a few year deals here, I think we would still be able to sign every one of the guys that I've talked about here and have money left over to re-sign some of our other players, some of the guys that have done well. It would just take a little bit of creative maneuvering. Terry Fontenot was on staff with the Saints when they drafted Marcus Davenport, so I think that would be a huge factor for us. Marcus Davenport knows Terry Fontenot very well, and I think that's a good end there. If I had to pick any one of the guys that I've talked about, he would be the guy that I would want to get going forward because I think he would be a building block on our defensive line for the future to build on with Grady Jarrett, Arnold Ebiketie, Taquan Graham, and a few of these other guys. I do think we need to bolster that defensive line a little bit at the tackle position or defensive tackle position, mainly because it can't all be Grady Jarrett. I just don't know who we're going to be able to get. I don't know who would be a solid upgrade at that position. We are going to have to look at paying Zacchaeus a little bit of money if we want to keep him for wide receiver next year. As this is his final year, though I don't think he's going to command the same money that some of our previous wide receivers have. But anyways, the Falcons are going to have a ton of money. We're going to be able to spend a bunch this offseason. We have no idea who's going to get re-signed yet. There's a lot of deals that happen in the first few weeks of March when the season opens up. So we'll see what happens as we go through NFL free agency here in the next few months as we approach that. We still have half a season of football left to play, and the Falcons are certainly in contention right now. That's all I've got for you today. Consider liking and subscribing to my channel. It would really help me out a lot and would help the channel grow and reach more people. But until next time, guys, thanks for watching and rise up.